These are the 3 secrets to selling your home for the most amount of money that buyers simply wish you didn't know. And so this is a story about these 2 properties that are very similar in the same neighborhood, and they were listed at the exact same price. Yet one of them sold significantly under the asking price, and the other was able to bring much more. This video is going to answer why and how this was possible. So regardless if you're selling your home now or sometime in the future, if you stick with me, by the end of this short video, you'll be ahead of 99% of all the other homeowners thinking about selling their home. You're going to learn the secrets about selling your home for the highest price that 99% of all licensed real estate agents don't even know. These proven principles, developed from over 20 years of compelling best practices compiled from top realtors, were applied to working with my clients, and these strategies work time and time again. And on average, they have allowed me to get more for their homes than not only the market suggested, but also than their neighbors around them. So this is exactly what I did for Mark in Burleson. And we listed his house at 465,000 and it sold for 485,000. Our Dave in Crowley, we listed his house at 265,000 and it sold for 300,000. Our John in Fort Worth, we listed his house at a price of 275,000 is what he was asking for, and without even going on the market, we were able to get $302,000. And I'm going to show you how I was able to get clients results like this in this video. So why did I make this video? It's really simple. My goal is to give you a real behind the scenes look into how I'm able to get my clients these type of results and why so many other homes not just fail to sell, but they sell for significantly under the asking price. So listen, you owe me nothing, but when you're ready, my goal is to one day earn the opportunity to interview for the job of selling your home. So let's start with something simple, and then we can get a bit more advanced. The driver of home prices is obviously supply and demand. And what we know about this is really, really simple. That if supply is low and demand is high, you get a higher price for your home. And the contrary is also true. If supply is high and demand is low, you get a lower price for your home. Everybody knows this. The question becomes, however, how do we create a situation where you have more demand for your home than there is supply, regardless of what's going on in the marketplace? Well, let's start off with secret number 1, price bracketing. Meet Mr. and Mrs. Smith. These are home buyers that are approved to purchase a home up to $600,000. And now meet Jill. She's a home seller whose home is worth about $530,000 to $550,000. Now, when we think about buyer behavior and how buyers look for homes, they search for homes online or in their favorite app. And so they go to their favorite real estate resource, and inside that website or app, they search for properties in whole numbers. And why do they do that? It's because they're pre-populated for them. As an example, like you see on the screen, a typical home search for a buyer that is approved for $600,000 might search for homes between $550,000 to $600,000 or $650,000, usually in a $50,000 to $100,000 range, so they can see what's available and make sure they don't miss out on anything. This is very common, and this is probably what you've done in the past or are doing now for yourself. What buyers don't do is search for properties in odd numbers. They would never search for a home, nor do the portals let you with some random numbers. of $547,650 to $654,320. They would never, ever, ever do that. What would be the point? So here's the mistake that most agents and most homeowners are making when they go to sell their home. They list their home with the famous $999 at the end. And in the case for Jill, just as an example, let's pretend her home was listed at $549,999. You see this all the time when you're searching for homes. This is a massive mistake, and here's why. This seller is looking for a $550,000 buyer, right? Well, like we just talked about, buyers, potential home buyers, are searching on real estate portals for properties and whole numbers. And so if buyers are searching for homes between 550,000 to 650,000, this poor home seller who has their home listed at $549,999, who is looking for a $550,000 buyer, doesn't even show up in the buyer search. So, in other words, this buyer doesn't even know this home is a potential option for them. It doesn't even show up on their radar. Why? Because the agent and the homeowner didn't know any better. So, what should Jill do? Well, the first simple strategy to account for buyer behavior in this way is to list properties directly on whole numbers and specifically on price brackets, which we're going to talk a lot about here in just a minute. So, if Jill changes the price, for example, from 549,999 to 550,000, here's what will happen. She would instantly double the amount of demand on her home with this one strategy. I hope you heard that. She would double the demand. Look at what happens. If she were to change the price accounting for how buyers search for homes on all websites and apps, all the potential buyers searching for homes, not just from 500 to 550,000, would see her property, but she would now show up to buyers starting their search at 550 and going up to 600 plus, allowing her property to get in front of what might be arguably more qualified buyers with more room to make stronger offers. So by simply pricing on whole numbers on a major buyer bracket, the homeowner is able to double the demand for their home. And what do we know about demand? As demand goes up and supply goes down, it drives up the price of the home and its perceived value. So now that we understand price bracketing, which is a very simple but powerful strategy, the next big mistake agents and sellers make is not knowing how to properly position the home in the marketplace. So, next, let's talk about secret number 2, positioning. So, here's just a simple example so you can understand what I do for clients. So we're not operating on just guesswork, and we're using the actual data to drive our decisions and position the property so that they don't leave any money on the table and they can maximize the exposure like we were talking about. So in this example of $535,000, and we're looking within the TAM, our total adjustable market, where we're going to find their buyer. So it would be within $100,000 range around that. So for this example, it would be $500,000 to $600,000. And so I take that TAM, our total adjustable market, and I do an active buyer analysis to identify where the demand in the marketplace is right now. And this is a crucial step that a lot of agents don't take into account, is to identify where the demand is. And so it will clearly show us where it would be advantageous to position the property based on that paired with other factors. So you can see here that within the total adjustable market of 500 to 600,000, that through reporting and that active buyer analysis, we identified that there was 43 showings that took place. These are active buyers searching for homes right now. And then we broke that down into the individual $25,000 brackets that buyers would be searching for on the various portals of their choice or apps that they choose, or working with agents, of course. And we can quickly see that in the price bracket of 550,000 to 575,000, that there was 17 showings, making up 39% of the total showings that took place within our range. And so this is very important because if you can get in front of the majority of the demand, especially when you pair that with the supply information, you can quickly capitalize on increasing the perceived value of your home. So we can quickly see that the next closest bracket would be the one before, from 525 to 550,000, with 14 showings are an additional 32%. So what does this mean for you as the seller? Well, if that's what demand looks like, the next thing that we have to do is to look at the supply. And we're trying to analyze where best to align and position the property such that it becomes the obvious choice to buyers. Well, if we look at the showing activity, we said that 550 to 575 has the highest demand. Well, the next thing we want to do is say, well, where's the lowest supply? Our competition is what we're talking about. And based on that price bracket between $500,000 and $600,000, there are 18 total homes for sale right now that we're competing against. Now, when we break that down into the four brackets, we can see that ironically, that 550 to 575 has the lowest amount of active homes. In other words, the supply is the very same bracket that has the highest demand, also has the lowest supply. And therefore, we can see that if this property was positioned in the bracket of 550,000 to 575,000, it would capture the largest pool of buyers. In this case, 71%. Every buyer looking for a home between 525 to 550 and 550 to 575. And the home positioned in the price bracket with the lowest amount of supply. This is the analysis that must be done on every property before it hits the market. Now we need to figure out, how do we make sure that your home would stand out in the specific price bracket as what we call the obvious choice. The one where buyers are looking at multiple homes and they look at your home like it's a magnet, come see your home and immediately write you an offer. And that brings us to secret number 3, where we're going to talk about and discuss time versus money, which is perhaps one of the most overlooked concepts by sellers. So we have to understand, how do buyers actually make decisions to write an offer? And not just write an offer, how do we strategically place the property in the market such that the buyer's offer represents their highest and most likely offer that you will accept? Well, the first thing is time. And so here's a quick kind of run through of what this looks like. We know that homes that sell faster than others will end up netting more money. And the exact opposite is true. That homes that sit on the market for a longer period of time, on average, end up selling for less money. So, as an example, this home that's listed at $550,000, if it sells on the first day, it will sell for asking or perhaps over. On average, based on market conditions, a seller may net up to 20% over asking when it sells that quick. A home that sells after the market average number of days will sell for a lot less. They may not even get their asking price. And so if you think about this, and if you put your buyer's hat on and ask yourself why this is, you'll see that as a buyer, if you were to walk into a home the first day that it hit the market and you fall in love with the property and you say to yourself, I want this property, what type of offer do you think you'd have to write in order for the seller to accept the offer the first day it was on the market? It would probably have to be extremely strong. And then the opposite is also true. If you walk into a property where the average time that it takes to sell a home, let's just say that is 14 days, and you go walk through the property and it's been on the market for, let's say, 5 or 6 months, and you decide you want the home and that you're in love with the home, think about how this additional information of how long it's been on the market will be reflected in your offer, taking this into consideration. You would probably have a lot more negotiation power. That only makes sense. So obviously, you want to be the seller where buyers are competing for your home and you're not just competing to have buyers come in and give you an offer after such a long time. Well, let's talk about how we make this happen. So let's pretend again you are the buyer. We're trying to understand, how does the buyer make these decisions? So here's how we stand out as the obvious choice. We're going to do what we call an active listing analysis, looking at the competition. And I'll show you how it works, and then we'll go through a real one together. So let's just pretend for a second you are looking at two homes, and the one you like has more features and benefits than the other one. It might, have additional items that you're interested in. It has more features and benefits. It might have a pool, or it might have a decked out kitchen, theater room, or game room. If that property was more money than the other one, in your mind as a buyer, you might say from a motivation standpoint, yeah, I could see that. I could justify paying more. It has more. Certainly, it makes sense. I'd be willing to pay more if it was the same price as the other property. However, motivation would probably increase even more. If you were getting more for the same price, it'd probably be, a no-brainer at that point. But with a property that has more at a lower price, for example, your motivation would go through the roof. You'd be ready to make a decision right away if you were clearly getting more at a lower price. That only makes sense, right? Well, let's look at the next example. A home that you like has the same features and benefits as the other home that you looked at. And if it was priced higher, but it had the same features and benefits, you probably would not be excited about that, right? However, if it was the same price and it has the same features and benefits, that'd be justifiable. You can make the decision based on maybe additional factors like slightly better location or color of the paint, or small things that don't matter as much. But if it was a lower price and had the same features, of course your motivation goes up. And then lastly, of course, if a home has less features and benefits, but it's the one you really like, if it had a higher price, you probably couldn't justify it. Paying more for less just doesn't make sense. Your motivation to purchase the home goes down. If it's the same price, but it has less features and benefits, same thing. Motivation continues to go down. However, if it has less and is at a lower price, it becomes the obvious choice. This is the concept that buyers go through when they write offers on properties with real estate professionals. So let's look at a real active competition analysis and how this might work for your home. So let's pretend there are 3 active properties that you might compete with. We've got this first one on 123 Bird Street. It's priced at $575,000. It's been on the market for 27 days in a market where homes on average are selling in 14. So right away, we know this has been on the market longer than most other properties. Well, it has more features and benefits than your home. And this is something that we both agree on. We went to go visit the house, we walked through the home, and we both agree yes, it clearly has more features and benefits than ours. Well, if it's listed at 575, it probably doesn't make sense to enter the market at a higher price if it has more than we have. We probably can't be the same price either. It's very clear that strategically we need to enter the market at a lower price to attract buyers. That probably makes sense. When we look at the next listing, 321 Act Avenue is priced at $550,000. It just hit the market. It's been on the market for only 2 days. This property, however, has less features and benefits than ours. So we can justify a higher price. Absolutely. Could we justify the same price? Absolutely. That would increase buyers' motivation based on the exercise we just went through. And if we had a lower price, the other home had less features and benefits, and we were lower in price, wow, do we ever become the obvious choice in that situation? This is how you attract multiple buyers to bid on your property, driving up the price. Lastly, we have the one on 567 Liz Lane. It's priced at 565. It's been on the market for a little over a month. It has the same features and benefits your home has. Almost the exact same. Can you list your home at a higher price and expect buyers to write an offer? Probably not. Can you be the same price? Well, potentially. If you had a lower price and the features and benefits were the same, well, now perhaps you become the obvious choice. Why would we not want to list the home at the same price if it has the same features and benefits? Well, here's what the data says. This house has been on the market for 34 days, where the average home only takes about 2 weeks to sell, which tells us that buyers right now, when they look at homes with these features and benefits, they are rejecting the price. And it's similar to ours. They are not willing to pay the price that is being offered. This is great insight for us. So we can save time by taking this into consideration. So this is why we analyze the competition. This is why I always would like to potentially walk clients through the homes that we're going to compete against, because it becomes more clear to them how we can position the home properly. So when we look at an active competition analysis, we can see out of these 4 homes, if we had buyers at the different price brackets in their search process, let's assume they either had showings or walked through the homes on open houses. We have the first one on Bird Street. It's nicer and listed at 575. And then we have the one on Act Avenue that's not quite as nice, listed at 550. And then of course, the one on Liz Lane is the exact replica, same floor layout, same builder. How do we stand out during these showings and become the obvious choice so that the buyer pool looks at the other homes and those homes help your house sell versus the opposite? So when we lay this out, it becomes completely clear that if we price the property at 550 and we have a little bit less than the one on Bird Street, it makes sense, right? And then of course we have much more than the one on Act Avenue, and we're the same price. And this house that's identical to ours is asking for more money, then this is how we become the obvious choice to buyers. So they're willing to choose our house first and we don't sit on the market and get less money over a long period of time. This is also will instantly double the demand on our home. We talked about this before. If we price directly at 550, we are going to attract buyers that are searching for homes between 500 and 550,000, and then we will show up in that search, and then we'll also show up in the search pool from buyers that are looking at a little bit more expensive homes, 550 to 600,000, where we become a really good option for people that are looking at the higher price point. So the end result is this. Remember Jill, the home seller? She had the home that was valued at $530,000 to $550,000. She strategically placed her home in the marketplace at $550,000, going through all three of these strategies that we just talked through. And on the third day of being on the market, she had the results of this. She was able to produce 13 showings in her home in 3 days and have 3 offers. And here's what we know. When there are multiple offers on a home and the buyers compete for the property, remember, understanding supply and demand, there's only one home that 3 families want. When we have more demand than there is supply, price of the home goes up. Remember Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the home buyers? They were approved for up to $600,000. Well, they placed an offer and won the home based on its features and benefits and its pricing. And they ended up getting the home at $567,000. Jill was happy, and then of course Mr. and Mrs. Smith were also happy. And the end result of going through all of these strategies, step by step, was that the home seller ended up getting more than the home was worth and sold it in a quicker than average amount of time. And this is how you can have 2 homes that are extremely similar in the exact same neighborhood, and one ends up selling for a lot less than asking price, and you have one that ends up selling for significantly more than asking price. And so let's recap what you've learned. Number 1, we talked about how home buyers actually search for homes and how you can instantly double the amount of buyer exposure on your home. This is how we get more buyers, which creates competition for your property. Number 2, we talked about where to position your home in the market so that regardless of market conditions, regardless of interest rates, you always have more buyer demand for your home than you do competition for other homes for sale. This will drive the price of your home up. And lastly, we talked about how to make your home stand out as the obvious choice to buyers so that multiple buyers start to compete with one another for your home, ultimately resulting in a higher sales price and better terms for you. This is just a small look into how I work with my clients so that 3 things happen. They maximize their sales price. 2, they find the perfect buyer for their home. And 3, the stress that most sellers feel when they're moving is eliminated, and they avoid sitting on the market for long extended periods of time. So what's next? Well, as promised, if you've made it this far, I have a special gift for you. When you're ready, I'd love the opportunity to meet with you and interview for the job of helping you to sell your home and successfully make the next big move in your life. During the meeting, I'll show you what we call a detailed home sale analysis. This analysis will show you, number 1, a detailed pricing strategy that will maximize the sales price of your home. Number 2 is going to include a custom supply and demand audit. This will allow you to price your home to qualify buyers so that it actually sells and doesn't sit on the market. Number 3, this analysis will include the active competition analysis. I will go through the homes that are actively for sale that you'll compete against right now so you can see how to make your home stand out against the competition. And then lastly, you'd get a seller profit report where I'd break down all the numbers so that as you're planning for your move, you can get a really good idea of how much money you will have to work with after you've sold. So the next step is really simple. Whether you're looking to sell now or in the next year or so, just click the link right underneath this video and you can just fill out a couple of details and I can get to work for you right away.